The Supreme Court decision in the case of Bohol Wisdom School and others versus MIRAFLOR Mabao. In the eyes of the law, there is a standard of morality that binds all those who come before it, which is public and secular, not religious. It is important to make this distinction as the court's jurisdiction extends only to public and secular morality. Public and secular morality refers to conduct proscribed because they are detrimental to conditions upon which depend the existence and progress of human society. Otherwise, if government relies upon religious beliefs in formulating public policies and morals, the resulting policies and morals would require conformity to what some might regard as religious program or agenda. In this case, respondent was suspended for engaging in premarital sexual relations, resulting in being pregnant out of wedlock. The court has previously ruled in similar cases that premarital sexual relations resulting in pregnancy out of wedlock cannot be considered disgraceful or immoral when viewed against the prevailing norms of conduct. In Lewis versus St. Scholastica's College Westgrove, the Supreme Court held, in stark contrast to Santos, the court does not find any circumstance in this case which would lead the court to conclude that the petitioner committed a disgraceful or immoral conduct. It bears stressing that the petitioner and her boyfriend, at the time they conceived a child, had no legal impediment to marry. Indeed, even prior to her dismissal, the petitioner married her boyfriend, the father of her child. As the court held in Radom, there is no law which penalizes an unmarried mother by reason of her sexual conduct or prescribes the consensual sexual activity between two unmarried persons. That neither does such situation contravene any fundamental state policy enshrined in the Constitution. Admittedly, the petitioner is employed in an educational institution where the teachings and doctrines of the Catholic Church, including that on premarital sexual relations, is strictly upheld and taught to the students. That her indiscretion, which resulted in her pregnancy out of wedlock, is anathema to the doctrines of the Catholic Church. However, viewed against the prevailing norms of conduct, the petitioner's conduct cannot be considered as disgraceful or immoral. Such conduct is not denounced by public and secular morality. It may be an unusual arrangement, but it certainly is not disgraceful or immoral within the contemplation of the law. In an Innocent versus St. Vincent Foundation for Children and Aging Incorporated. In this case, we note that both Zaida and Marlon at all times had no impediments to marry each other. They were adults who met at work, dated, fell in love, and became sweethearts. The intimate sexual relations between them were consensual, born by their love for one another, in which they engaged in discreetly and in strict privacy. They continued their relationship even after Marlon left St. Vincent in 2008. They took their marriage vows soon after Zaida recovered from her miscarriage, thus validating their union in the eyes of both men and God. All these circumstances show the sincerity and honesty of the relationship between Zaida and Marlon. They also show their genuine regard and love for one another, a natural human emotion that is neither shameless, callous, nor offensive to the opinion of the upright and respectable members of the secular community. While their actions might not have strictly conformed with the beliefs, ways, and mores of St. Vincent, which is governed largely by religious morality, or with the personal views of its officials, these actions are not prohibited under any law, nor are they contrary to conduct generally accepted by society as respectable or moral. Sexual intercourse between two consenting adults who have no legal impediment to marry, like respondent and her boyfriend, is not deemed as immoral. No law prescribes such, and said conduct does not contravene any fundamental state policy enshrined in the Constitution. We thus find that respondent's act of engaging in premarital sexual relations with her boyfriend and eventually getting pregnant is not disgraceful or immoral within the contemplation of the law. As the CA aptly ruled, suffice it to say, Mabao was suspended because BWS believed her to have acted in an immoral manner, like engaged in premarital sex. However, BWS' idea of religious morality runs counter with the state's idea of secular morality. Jurisprudence has already set the standard of immorality with which an act should be gauged. It is public and secular, not religious. Whether a conduct is considered disgraceful or immoral should be made in accordance with the prevailing norms of conduct, which refer to those conducts which are prescribed because they are detrimental to conditions upon which depend the existence and progress of human society. The fact that a particular act does not conform to the traditional moral views of a certain sectarian institution is not sufficient reason to qualify such act as immoral unless it, likewise, does not conform to public and secular standards. More importantly, there must be substantial evidence to establish that premarital sexual relations and pregnancy out of wedlock is considered disgraceful or immoral. On a secular level, premarital sex is not immoral per SC Mabao did not have sexual relations with a married man. Neither was she married at the time. Using the Supreme Court's gauge of morality, we do not see how Mabao's conduct is immoral. Considering Mabao is not guilty of immoral conduct, her suspension is illegal and without basis. Respondent's suspension on the ground of engaging in premarital sexual relations resulting in pregnancy out of wedlock is therefore illegal. Moreover, petitioners cannot claim that they substantially complied with procedural due process. It is undisputed that petitioners did not issue a notice to explain before suspending respondent. Nonetheless, they argue that procedural due process was substantially complied with as respondent was given the opportunity to explain her side. She admitted the violation, and her suspension was reduced in writing. Petitioners also argue that the suspension was mutually agreed upon by the parties. Suspension from work must be reasonable to meet the constitutional requirement of due process of law. It will be reasonable if it is based on just or authorized causes enumerated in the Labor Code. The employee must also be given notice and the opportunity to be heard before judgment is rendered. Any disciplinary action which affects employment must pass due process scrutiny in both its substantive and procedural aspects. In this case, respondent confessed her violation of school policy on September 19, 2016. Per the minutes of the administrative team meeting held on September 21, 2016, prior to including respondent in the meeting to discuss her situation, the administrative team already decided that respondent will be suspended starting September 22, 2016, which the following day until she is legally married to her partner. Verily, petitioners already decided respondent's disciplinary sanction before hearing her side. Petitioners cannot therefore claim substantial compliance with procedural due process. For petitioners' failure to comply with substantive and procedural due process in suspending respondent, the CA did not err in ruling that her suspension is illegal.